Hey everybody, good morning. Yeah, it was interesting yesterday. I think every single interaction I have is meant to be an interaction that I need to focus on because there are so many aspects of our society and the human body that you can't possibly think of everything until they come your way and is presented to you in such a way where I can have an opinion about it or even a scientific explanation based upon all of my research. So, anyways, I say it like that because I do a talk to text type stuff or a dictation type of stuff on my computer, and when I hear it back, that's how they pronounce it on the computer. So, anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. I figured out why we have the three branches of government. Okay, we have such a split brained society that you have to have three branches of government that are filled with representatives of all the 50 states. Now, in other countries, you have parliament. Okay, you have a figurehead, like we have the president, and then you have parliament that carries out the day to day operations as well as put in legislation and also nation build and figure out where how all the agencies will be applicable to the people. And so I understand what the deal is. Okay, I mean MK Ultra, we heard about it in the conspiracy world with the Illuminati, and MK Ultra is a way of applying a lot of pressure, pain, and trauma to a person to get them to be very, very honed in on a very specific skill. And the outcome of pain and trauma, the outcome of MK Ultra is then you get something like the stars in Hollywood. You get someone like Tiger Woods. You get someone like a Britney Spears. You get somebody like anyone that's been put out there by mainstream media that is very good in their one specific area. So yesterday when one of my relatives, adopted relatives, was saying that, oh yeah, humans don't only use a certain percentage of their brain. And I'm just like, okay, well, I never disputed that, yes, when you're on the decline, you're only going to use a percentage of your brain and it's going to diminish over time. Why she had to say that, I have no idea. It was as if, I think, she was responding to what happens when you die type of thing and the whole thing with the jelly juice. The jelly juice, you get your meat matter back, okay? So that way you can evolve. When you die, it's just a snapshot of your brain and your personality and your feelings at the time, like a video that can never be evolved until you start over again. So that's how I see that the universe is like a waiting room for Earth or any other planet that will allow some spirit to come in and actually take part in their meat society type of thing. And so she said, oh yeah, you only can use a certain part of your brain, then you use the rest of your brain, then you start working things out when you die. I'm like, no, you don't work shit out when you die. Now this thing with the Pleiadians, yeah, okay. You can work shit if you are accepted as a Pleiadian, because we don't know how you can become a conscious thought to help humanity evolve. Because I said that, yes, maybe it's the Pleiadian side of me that's helping me in my dreams work out stuff, but it's only able to do that because I have a brain. But how are the Pleiadians? Well, because they're still good people at some point. They're just like this conscious thought that probably was a person that finally, that went into a spiritual form, but is still able to help and find aspects that or find things that people are missing and help plug in and put in the details. I don't know. I mean, that's really going way off there, but let's take it down to earth here, okay, about split brains. When you're on the J juice and you're on the incline, you're going to be using more of your brain. And at some point, you're going to be using all of your brain and you're going to use both sides of your freaking brain. Okay? So the reason why we have Congress and Parliament and the president and so many different religions and so many different belief systems is because we have a split brain society. And that comes from pain and trauma. Look, when you're a kid and a boy is getting circumcised, that pain and trauma splits the brain. And then yes, it down the road, okay, nation building. Okay? Any type of trauma to any part of the body is going to have some kind of cell memory, some kind of traumatic memory to it, and then that's going to come to surface and manifest in something. And then I think what happens in school and in families, they foster that trauma and hone it in to make them and groom a person, whether you be groomed by your parents who are knowing exactly what they're doing, or you're groomed by the system, whether it's the area that you live in, the type of career fields that are offered to you, the teachers, the authority, they know how to direct a minority or a child population to figure out. They do the testing. I mean, you've heard about the whole GATE program back in the 80s. I don't know if they still have that now, but all the testing can kind of tell a person, you can profile what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, and then you go and foster it. And just like basic training, I went through basic training. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you, I was the guidon, and I was crying half the time in basic training. Girls were wanting to commit suicide in basic training. We had like the gamut, everyone from all across the world at Lackland Air Force Base, and it was a traumatic time. But there's a reason why basic training is the way it is. There's a reason why hazing rituals happen in college. It's to see if you can handle, and not everybody survives the pressure of basic training, of hazing, of even families that really want their kids to be so successful to where they just apply so much pressure to where sometimes a kid doesn't survive and they just go haywire. Other kids rise up to it because they figured out how to dissociate. And other kids run away or do whatever. I ran away a lot. So. But that's the thing is that's why we have Congress, that's why we have a president, that's why we have Parliament. Because we live in a split brain society. And so at some point with the J juice, you're going to conjoin all the parts that were split apart, that were not flexed. And you're going to start flexing the parts of your brain that you never flexed before. Now, that is something that you cannot really say too much to those science and technology, because they're coming from the entropy, the death programming. They're coming from the body on decline, and then they just try to harness what they can on your way out the door. That's exactly what science and technology is doing right now. Maybe a handful probably understand jelly juice, but it would be too much to present it to their peers because they're still the dinosaurs in technology and in biotechnology and the medical holistic system. And so until those dinosaurs are really out of the picture, jelly juice is going to be fringe. It's going to be alternative. It's going to be, conspiracy, which I'm fine with. I don't really care. Everything that I've been pointing out, it's being proven. Just because because I've characterized things as, okay, it's evolution. It's healing. It's, there's the yin and yang of antibodies. And yes, that's what's in the vaccines, okay? It's the growth potential and it's the atrophic potential. It's the programming. It's basically a 3D printer. It's what Bill Gates does in Microsoft and what he does with the vaccines and biotechnology. They go hand in hand. And then all of this rollout, this preparation, all the presidents prior to Trump and prior to Biden was like the change management process that you see when you walk into a company and you're trying to get them on board to adhere to the new operating system. It's a process. And when you deal with 7 billion people in a whole world, not like a little agency that's trying to upload a new operating system, it's going to take longer with 7 billion people versus, 100 people in a department. Okay? And so, so I had the privilege, thank God, because I could see now all sides, but I could see the technology, the computer side of what's going on as far as change management, viruses, and operating systems. I can see it from the biotechnology side, from my dad's side. Not that he really brought brought work home to us and told us all about it. No, he was just talking about cloning and this and that. And I'm like, okay. And he's more into science fiction, and that's the things that I was introduced to: Star Trek, science fiction, cloning, and just his analytical point of view. And then, yeah, seeing the industry rags, on the coffee table or under a credenza as pharmaceutical. And I knew that was the first word I knew really had a spell, really, that was really long. Pharmaceutical was like the word. And then my mother with psychotherapy, the manipulation, the law side of it. Okay. And then me shadowing someone in Microsoft, actually seeing how they map out the business processes and how do you implement change management in the business process from the enterprise level to the service level and all points in between. And then the single point of contact, point of origin. I mean, then you start realizing all the language on all the different industries are really not that different. They're all explaining the same thing. You just have to figure out how to put it together and realize that, yeah, the body's like a 3D printer. The body's like an operating system. The body's like plumbing. The body is like electricity. And so then you start formulating a bigger picture, and then you look at history, and then you look at religion, and then you look at, and that's why Facebook is like the collective conscience, because Facebook, if you actually allow yourself to understand different thought processes, you could actually learn a bigger picture than what your little tiny slice of reality that someone just gave to you and traumatized you with. And that's why people are on drugs, alcohol, totally into sex, in distraction, because yes, the trauma of a boy being born in a hospital, the trauma of a girl dealing with the boys that were in the hospitals in the beginning, getting circumcised and having to just fight them off all the time. Why we have so many sexual predators in our community, because of how the traumatic programming, how we started out, has then manifested and then fostered by movies and books, and then the people that we look up to, and all the different influencers in our society that are just glitching from all of that programming. And so that's why there's a reset, because at some point the glitching gets out of control. At some point it's not manageable like it used to be. How many more agencies and how many more departments in government are you going to create to deal with a glitching population? And then you don't even know how bad it's going to be. You can kind of see like the zombie apocalypse, or, the TWD, The Walking Dead, and any other of those movies that are like dystopian and zombie apocalyptic. Like I just watched what is it? Not Apocalypto. It is, or what is it? The Vietnam War with Martin Sheen. But I forget, it's like Apocalypse Now or something, I think. But that's pretty intense. That's when the program in the military goes awry, when it's stuck in the middle of Cambodia, and you've now deemed yourself a god amongst all these indigenous people, and you kill and you maim, and that's as bad. That's the worst programming. Okay? And so you're seeing in movies, that's why movies are now really eye-opening. You don't look at movies for entertainment, you look at movies for like, holy shit, this is our society. These are different aspects of our society. TV is so many different aspects of our society. Okay, all the different programming and everything is compartmentalized. And that's how they're able to present this information, where you don't feel traumatized because you're like removed from it. When you're compartmentalized in your science world, in your tech world, in your entertainment industry world, in your teaching world, in your library world, and maybe your service industry world, everything is compartmentalized. So you don't really understand really that actually what they're experiencing is what you're actually experiencing too, on a different level, or it could come up at some point. And so you won't know until it happens to you. And then when it happens to you, then you have some kind of relationship to that compartmentalized thing. And so it's the trippiest thing. It's the virtual reality of our life. We do live in a matrix type of life. This is a controlled type of programming. Okay? And not that it's bad or wrong, it's just what it is. As long as you recognize it, then you can find a way to balance yourself within this programming and figure out how everything works. Like last night, I watched a movie. It's called Our House, and it's about this guy that has all this electricity that he figured out this device that really amped up the electricity, and then weird demonic ghosts were able to actually present themselves. And that's what gave me that whole idea last night, that electricity, yes, can bring up those in the spirit realm, because that's also what they do in Ghost Adventures and the Ghost Hunters, is they use electricity to find different spirits that are still snapshotted in their same place and haven't been freed up or whatever, and weren't released and still held hostage to that specific thing. And so that is how they're able to bring things up, is through EMF detectors and all these different contraptions and machines. And so then also too, they associated a higher electrical current in that one area does bring up the spirit realm. And so then you're going to have with the grid, with all the different transducers in the viruses and the therapeutics. Okay, all of that electricity is going to bring up people's demons. It's going to bring up people's angels. Okay, and that's why it's so important that you do purify your spirit, not by doing occultic stuff, but by releasing the excess, by actually conjoining both sides of your brain, by actually facing your evolution. Because yes, the more the electricity amps up, the more your balances or imbalances are going to be projected, and they're going to be inflated, and they're going to accelerate. Okay? And instead of watching someone slowly deteriorate over time, you're going to watch people really aggressively deteriorate over time. And that's when people get triggered very easily. That's when things get kind of weird. Maybe with the higher electricity and you can handle it, you might see spirits walking down the street and not even know it's a spirit, or if it's just a very strong spirit in that electrical area, or if it's really a person, you won't really know what reality is. It's going to be a trip. So that's why you always have to stay grounded, always. And just remember, nothing is really real except for what you have control over, which is your body, mind, and spirit, and your animal. You can't even control your kid at some point, because they're going to do their own thing, and then they will evolve into whatever they choose to evolve to. Your husband, your friends, your wives, your parents. It's like you're not going to know people until they actually know themselves. You'll only know what they've projected, what they want you to know about them. But you won't really know who people are. And so the only way for you to understand people is if you understand yourself, so you understand how people operate, and you don't have to try to figure out who they are, because you know yourself. When you know yourself, you'll know how the world operates, and then nothing is a mystery. And that's how I figured out my Jilly Juice, because I knew myself that I was reacting to Jilly Juice in such a way that was so extraordinary that I've never felt before. And I knew this was 5 years ago, this was going to be so amazing as soon as I got my duckies in a row. And that was a process. But I figured out who I was first. I figured out where I came from. I didn't have someone tell me, oh, you're whatever. I had people tell me everything about me. My parents, my family, my friends, husbands, wives, whatever. People tell me who they think I am. And that's where people get lost, is because they allow somebody else's opinion to really be who they are. But the only way you're going to know yourself is you got to deal with your own pain, your own trauma, all of your different stuff. And those that are running away or been a victim of major PTSD, they're not going to get where you're coming from. And they're going to go and hang out with those that have also been traumatized, that are finding ways to escape their pain and their trauma through religion, through politics, through science, through medication, through drugs, through just sticking their head in the sand, through justifying, through distractions. And so you can tell who they are, because sometimes you know their history, and sometimes you can just tell that they can't deal with your information. It really causes them to glitch, whether it's an angry face, a laughing face, or even a sad face. Okay? When you're anything but just like, even, then you're dealing with glitching that's going on. But there's manageable glitches, and then there's like glitches where they're out of fucking control. And that's why Facebook exists, so the CIA and the FBI can figure out and profile who's an out of control glitch and who is just going through their evolution. Because yes, when you actually do heal and seal on the J juice and you feel new evolutions, yes, you're going to feel a little bit of glitch here and there. You're going to feel some kind of way, but it's not going to be out of control. It's not going to be unmanageable. It'll be manageable. That's what you have to look forward to, is that every new evolution with 7 billion people is not going to be a surprise. It'll be manageable, and you'll know how to work with it. And you'll know what it is. You won't have to go to the hospital or the doctor and be like, oh my God, what's going on? Okay? You can look on Facebook, not Facebook, but like on the Google to figure out like what the name of the symptoms are if you're not familiar, or some kind of physical manifestation that you're not familiar with. Is there an actual name for it? And usually there is. It's always part of some kind of disease, because every single disease is a part of evolution that hits and has a conglomeration of different parts of the body. And so it's called different diseases. But they're all related, okay? They're all interconnected. Nothing is separate unto itself. Okay? And so you just have to understand and look at your dog's behavior, look at your kid's behavior, look at your behavior, look at your habits, and you start taking notes and seeing the differences and the changes so you understand how evolution works. It is the changes in how you operate on a day-to-day basis, and even what you're hungry for, what you're thirsty for, and then also to what you dream about. Okay? So you're going to see a bigger picture, and that means that you're going to use both sides of your brain. The percentage, I couldn't tell you. Nobody can tell you what percentage you use of your brain. But it's very obvious when you start dying, parts of your brain are going to be diminished. Parts of your brain are going to diminish, which means that yes, in a dying world, in a dying industry, an industry that deals with death on a day-to-day basis, like the medical holistic system, of course they deal with people who only use parts of their brain, because that's how we started out. We started out already at a deficit, and then we had pain and trauma right at the get-go at birth. Childhood is traumatic for a lot of people. Not everybody, but for a lot, especially for boys, if you're born in a hospital. And then from that point forward, it's the pain, the trauma, the pressure, the hazing. I mean, that's why better to homeschool, because I'm telling you, public school can be a freaking gladiator camp. It was for me too. I was bullied. Okay? And so it is what it is. You just got to understand how it all works. And yes, a certain amount of stress is good. And that's the thing. To be great, you have to deal with the stress of it all. But if my parents weren't who they were, if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through, would I have gotten J-juice? And that's the things that every parent, every authority, even you have to figure out. How do you get a strong, viable human who hasn't gone through major stress, whatever it is? And if you have to manufacture the stress to make them strong, is that ethical? Is that moral? Because I look at that, like, if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through as a child, through Vietnam, all this shit that I went through throughout my whole life, all the crap, would I have done J-juice, or would I have just followed suit with everybody else? And that is the conundrum. And so if we can stop bearing babies and just get a human to finally deal with who they are and all the crap they went through, and stop having children unless you really can guide them so carefully. And yes, the stress is going to be doing the J-juice, because they've already inherited predispositions, and they're going to have to deal with the conditions of the environment. And yeah, they're going to have to deal with people out there that are bad, wrong, and mean. Not that they're bad, wrong, and mean, but because they have so much glitches that they won't know how to control themselves. And so you have to teach your kids. That's why having a kid right now is going to be so dicey for so many people, because of what they have to go through to finally be a viable human being that is strong. And not everybody can survive childhood. I had questions. I did not see myself living to 30. Yes, Emily. I did not see myself living to 30 years ago. I did not think I was going to live long enough. How does a child think that way? Because they're so hopeless on every level that there is no future for them, because they couldn't fit within the mold. That's what I don't want anyone to have to experience. But if that's what they experience and they still rise above, that's a whole nother level that they'll probably get to. But that sucks. That's like risking, someone committing suicide and then someone finally just pulling through. So, just you as adults, be fucking strong. Deal with your stuff. I feel bad for any kid in our society right now because the stress is going to be so insane because the parents were still taught from the old world. Now we're in a new world. You're going to have conflicts of the new world and the old world working together. Not really working together, but really like battling each other out. The kid's going to try to meet the parents' needs, but the society is not going to support it. And they have predispositions. It's going to be hell for the kids nowadays. It's going to be hell. There must be a path for these kids to follow so that way they don't end up feeling like there's a hopeless future for them. And that's what's going to, that's going to be I don't know. That's what's going to be difficult for the future. But I'm going to go and drink my coffee. I'm going to just do my typing and figure it out. But I understand now. I get the whole split brain society. I get the MK Ultra. I get why we have all the Hollywood stars and the Olympians. And I understand why we have the people that we have in power. They're all aging. They're all losing parts of their brain. That's why they have to have a collective conscience in Congress. And then they siphon the energy off the people. And so that's how you have to see why government is the way it is. And at some point, you have one collective conscious with one brain, not split brains all across the world. But that means you'd have to face your pain and demons. But there's going to be a segment of society that's going to be split-brained and used as entertainment pieces. That's going to happen. Just look on your TV. Look at all the reality shows. People will die for fame, which means that they will go through the torture and the physical and the mental and emotional abuse to be on TV. I went through it. Look at Dr. Phil. That's a split-brained type of show as you can get. Real Housewives, the trauma and the abuse that you endure so you can have your word out there. If you can handle it, great. But some can't. Some glitch. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. I got to think about this stuff. Bye.